Hello, hello, my beautiful, amazing listeners. Oh my goodness. How I need this topic today and the reminders that I'm going to be sharing with you around overwhelm. I totally need a reminder for myself. Right before I even hit the record button, I was doing my thought dump and I just wrote down in big capital letters, get all of the things done yesterday, right? Like it's just go, 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 go. But how can I do all the things, especially when I'm just tired, tired, tired. So, I became overwhelmed putting just some notes, some bullet points together for this overwhelming episode that we're going to be talking about. Because there's just so many things that I want to say and that I want to offer around this that my brain is just like, there's too much. You have to say all of it. And so you might as well just not hit record. So I'm like, okay, no, I'm just hitting record. We're going to just talk about overwhelm. And yes, I'll probably do many more episodes around overwhelm. So I'm giving myself permission to do that. But really, this episode came from an experience that Scott Jackson and I just recently had. And I was like, I want to do an episode on overwhelm because we were out getting some pizza. We were all out on a date. Jackson, who's now mostly the only child when Scott's kids aren't with us, he has to come on dates with us now. So, anyways, we were all out on a date and we were standing in line at this pizza place. I was going to name it, but I won't out them. I'm never going back. But, anyways, we were standing in line at this pizza place and there were two people at front taking orders and making the pizzas. There was a young man and a young woman, two young adults. And as we were waiting, I was observing the most fascinating thing. I was observing this young man moving very slow. Like we're talking slow. And there were people in line after us. Like it was a lot of people. Honestly, I probably 15, 16 people in line. Okay. They were definitely overwhelmed, right? So this young man was moving very, very slow. And then this young woman was moving very, very fast. Like she's literally running around, making pizza so fast and salad so fast and answering phones while she's throwing salad on a plate and multitasking, right? Like just you're exhausted watching her kind of a thing. Okay. And I'm watching her move so fast, multitasking, doing all the things, hardly breathing, while this other young man, her coworker, is slow next to her, just going at his own pace, just totally happy. And she's not happy. She's being like the fake happy, like, hi, welcome in. Thanks. Have a great day. Right. And in the moment, it was just like, okay, how she's looking right now is how I feel inside my body. Like I am feeling everything that I am seeing her do right now. Just everything inside me just running around, thoughts are racing around. I'm multitasking, even in my head. It's just a little bit of insanity going on. And she just gave a visual to that for me. But really, I just saw so much overwhelm in this young woman. And it really did remind me a lot of my women who are going through divorce and feeling so overwhelmed right now. And I want to hold space for that. I want to offer you a couple tools today about how we can handle overwhelm and really understanding a couple, like there's two different types of overwhelm. And so I'm going to address that today as well. But many of you listening are here because you've had a divorce from a marriage where there was betrayal, abuse, trauma, and most often that lasted years, if not decades. And this is where the body keeps the score because your body has known something is wrong before cognitively you knew something was wrong. And most likely you were in fight, flight, and then you got the discovery or a disclosure, partial disclosure, and then bam, freeze, system overload. But we perhaps chalked up, like before that discovery, before we knew what was happening, a lot of you might have had the experience where you're like, I had no idea. My body didn't know because I had no idea this came out of absolutely the blue. And I understand that some of you who are listening are like, no, I didn't know. My body didn't even know. Now that I cognitively know, I still cannot look back and go, oh, that's what that was, because maybe there wasn't a whole lot of gaslighting. And yet I want to challenge that just a little bit because I think what I can relate to, at least, and what I see sometimes, is that we perhaps made what our body was telling us, hey, something's off here. I'm just an anxious person, or I'm dealing with depression. We might have lumped that into a postpartum depression because some of the acting out was during our pregnancy or post pregnancy. And so we made it mean something about us, like, right, we're off, I'm off, this is me, this is not him. Or, and what I can relate to is I kept myself so busy and such in this like supermom mode. And I was just go, go, go and do. And sitting, relaxing, doing anything like that. My my brain made me like, you're lazy. So I didn't. And it was just constantly moving and going, that I really wasn't paying attention to my body. And I got to tell you, the more I do this work, I'm still in awe of how easily it is to become so disconnected from ourselves, from our body, our emotions, and our thoughts. I gently, lovingly, very compassionately want to push back on that just a little, because I think the more you start to connect with your body and your emotions, that it will start to bring up some of that body keep the score type of memory. So, anyways, a little tangent there, but I think we've got so much going on. So, if you have not done that internal work to practice grounding and widening that window of tolerance, like if you find yourself just constantly like you're crying, and remember, there's nothing wrong with crying, but if your emotions are not regulated, then that's a really beautiful indicator that there is some work. There is some intentional work and practice around grounding so that the state of collapse won't turn into chronic pain or chronic illness and keep you stuck in this trauma response, which today we're talking about the overwhelm response, right? Where you're in dorsal vagal. I want to take a moment here too, because you might be listening to me describe this state and some emotions are coming up. Just notice the body. Like, let's take this opportunity right now to practice what I'm offering here is what's happening in your body as you hear me even talk about this state. Notice your chest, notice your stomach, notice your jaw, your throat, your shoulders, your neck. Just draw your attention and awareness to your body and take a deep breath, a belly breath. Consciously choose right now to be curious rather than judge yourself. Maybe just even say the word right now out loud, interesting, as you're noticing your body. Okay, in this episode, we're going to get some education, some knowledge that can bring more awareness to the experiences. We're going to talk about some tools that you can practice this week to help you with overwhelm. Going through trauma and betrayal, abuse, and divorce, you're transitioning into a new life, a new environment, perhaps new people surrounding you, new emotions for your children. Perhaps they have a new school. You have a new job, maybe a job for the first time. And if you're not taking any time to create safety within yourself, and like I said, widen that window of tolerance. And when I say tolerance to these intense emotions, then you will absolutely be in a state of no energy. And this is just really hard to come out of. And I think that a lot of you perhaps wanted to click on this episode to find ways to just stop being overwhelmed. Like, just tell me what to do so I can stop being overwhelmed. Okay, yes, I'm going to give you some tips and tools. But the first thing that I'm going to offer you right now in this moment is to accept the overwhelm that is. Accept what is currently happening in your life with overwhelm, because this is your human experience. Okay. It doesn't mean that you're not strong enough. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, that you're in this space. Remember, I will never minimize the trauma that you've experienced, and this is not a quick fix. And I'm so sorry that you've experienced this. And I promise it can get better when you practice tools that I will definitely offer you. But the first tool is to accept. And acceptance is not approval, right? We're not approving what happened to us, but we're accepting that this is what happened. We were impacted, and this is how my body, my emotions, and my brain are responding. So I'm not going to judge myself and make myself wrong, or that I did something wrong. I'm not going to shame myself and make that mean that I intrinsically am bad or wrong. Okay. And I'm not even going to blame, right? This is a big one. This is a big one for some of you where maybe you're in this phase where your ex is to blame for everything, right? Like you got up late. Ugh, it's his fault. I mean, if he hadn't done what he did and ruined my life plans, then I wouldn't have to stay up so late working on start that over. And letting go of that blame is a big one because perhaps some of you are in this phase where your ex is the blame for everything. Like you got up late. Ugh, his fault. I mean, if he hadn't done what he did and ruined my life plans, then I wouldn't have had to stay up so late working and cleaning and doing all of the bills, and I wouldn't be so tired, and then I wouldn't have hit my snooze button a million times, and then it's just all his fault. Or you're late picking up your kids from school and it's his fault. I mean, he doesn't even live in the same state, but if he hadn't done what he did and ruined my life plans, then I wouldn't be working this crazy job hours and going a million miles an hour and now running late to pick up my kids. His fault. So we want to move out of that phase, through that phase, because honestly, this is how we stay attached, right? This is how we stay tethered. And the blame keeps you in victim mode and not in empowerment. Okay. So it's okay that I was late picking up my kids. I had to just okay, that's my acceptance, right? When I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm just going to accept I'm running late today. And in all honesty, my kids loved it when I was late because there was a park right next to the school that they would run over and just play. I mean, to the point where I drop them off. I'm like, are you going to be late? So a lot of the things that we are worried about or consumed about that create some of this overwhelm, these things that we might not have total control over. And as moms, we think that, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late and it's going to destroy my children. It's one more thing. It's one more disappointment. I think sometimes we have to take a little step back and get a reality check, right? I don't think all the time our kids are feeling what we think they're feeling. It's what we're feeling. And because I was in blame, I put that emotion on my children, but in reality, they were fine with me being late because they gave them more playtime. Anyways, stress and overwhelm have both a physiological and psychological response and reactions. But it's as Brene Brown puts it. She says, regardless of how strongly our body responds to stress, that high cortisol, increased heart rate, our emotional reaction is more tied to our cognitive assessment. So how we think when we handle a situation more than how our body is reacting, which really proves the power of thought, right? And that emotions of stress are responding to how our brain is thinking about a situation. So back to the two young adults in the pizza place, this situation, the circumstances were the same for both this young man and this young woman, right? They had a long line of people who they were serving. They both heard the phone ringing off the hook. They both had to prepare the food, but one, the sloth, was thinking, I'll get to it when I get to it. I mean, I know this because he literally said that out loud. Literally. And then the woman must have been thinking a billion thoughts, but she just kept saying to everyone who walked in, thanks for coming. And we're hurrying as fast as we can. So just be patient, okay? Okay, thanks. We'll be right with you as fast as we can. All right. And she's stressed. That overwhelm is when the level of stress has become so high and so intense, both in emotion and thoughts, that the body is no longer able to function. So that's where you might find yourself wondering what to do next and blank. Your system has shut down and it needs out of survival to shut down. When there's so much energy being used in the brain and that brain sees us as danger because now you've blown through your reserves, right? That reserved energy that gets stored up for times of trauma. So the brain is just like, okay, stop functioning because we have to fill this reserve tank back up. And lady, you're getting in the way. Boom, overwhelm, system shut, locks down. And then what the hell, where the hell, and how the hell become the main questions right now. So being able to identify legitimate overwhelm when literally you cannot do anything but take care of yourself because there's nothing left in the tank for anyone or anything. That's legitimate overwhelm. John Kabat-Zinn, and I'm probably botching his name, but he describes overwhelm as a feeling that our lives are somehow unfolding faster than the human nervous system and psyche are able to manage, which makes so much sense when we think about our central nervous system. And so that fight flight, which takes up the energy in the reserve, sucks out all of the energy, and we've been functioning in that for far too long. The body goes, no, 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 we have nothing left to give. Boom, dorsal vagal, because we're not doing anything to come into that parasympathetic state. So we go into dorsal vagal, shut down, completely system overload. Something to be mindful of in this space right here is that this is not a space to make decisions. I had a client once come to me, and it was should I stay or should I go? Not really sure if she should move into separation. And she was in legitimate overwhelm, rightly so. But this was not the time to coach her around a decision like that. And it can feel really frustrating too, right? When you're just like, I just need to make a decision. I want to make a decision, but it's not coming to me. There's no clarity. There's no peace because you're in a state of overwhelm and you've run through that reserve. And so we've got to shut down. And this is the kind where you've got to stop and ask yourself, like, what do I need right now? Like right in this moment. Do I need to deep breathe? Do I need to eat something? Do I need to sleep? Every woman needs more sleep, right? Do we need to ask for help? Ask for help so that you can then do what I know you do well, and that's help other people, help your children. But you got to help yourself first. You got to put your mask on first and start breathing into that before you give the mask to someone else. So says Southwest Airlines, right? So when you're dealing with legitimate overwhelm that is situational, it's good to know that it will pass. And right now, you're in the basics of breathing, eating, sleeping, one foot in front of the other, very kind and compassionate with yourself, and holding on to the hope that this too shall pass. And I think too, I'll just mention is when you have had trauma and have not taken the steps to heal, then a lot of the life situation that are not life threatening, your system is still in that fight flight. So it sees everything as a perceived threat. And this can create overwhelm to the system very quickly as well. So like, I have a plan to take the kids to school at this time and get to work by this time. And then I see I have to stop and get gas. And that wasn't part of the time planning. So then I freak out, start crying and panicking. And in seconds, I have myself fired from my job and homeless. That's a perceived threat that really isn't one. Because I'm in overwhelm, my body quickly shuts down at that perceived threat. Okay, another type of overwhelm that I want to talk about, this is more of the lifestyle type. When you're in functional freeze, like living like you're constantly bracing for impact, and it burns up so much energy. This can come with some pathological labels like controlling. Maybe you've had someone, maybe even your ex, tell you you're so controlling. And when you've been living with this for years, before you even knew about your husband's betrayal, your body's been keeping the score, right? And the patterns of significant disruption in the body are manifesting. And the tools I'm going to offer here for this type of overwhelm can also be practiced in the situational overwhelm when your central nervous system is on overload. So this lifestyle overload, this is going to look like a to-do list that never ends, right? You overcommit because you can't say no. And I'm just going to pause here and tell you that a lot of you might have been in functional freeze or a lifestyle overload before you even got married, which is why it would make sense. It's harder for you to have recognized your partner's gaslighting or all of those little signs because you've already learned from childhood to function like this. Again, out of, air quoting survival. So again, maybe just take a moment to remind yourself that we're just getting curious here. Deep breath. It's interesting. Notice maybe how long you've been perhaps living in a lifestyle of overwhelm. Maybe you've always had the never ending to do list. Maybe even in college, there was a never ending to do list and you couldn't ever just stop and breathe and pay attention to you. Okay. And maybe you learned to overcommit and overdo and overfunction as a lifestyle where you can't say no, right? Maybe there's things all over your countertops because you don't have time to put anything away, or you're just telling yourself, I'm just going to need that next week, so I might as well just leave it out. And so there's just overwhelm even on the counters. There's just all these things that are overwhelming and piling up when you are the last on your to-do list of things to attend to, or you find yourself heading to do laundry. So you've got your bucket of laundry, you're walking into the laundry room, but before you even get there, you find yourself being drawn to the dishes in the sink and you start unloading the dishwasher, but then the dog is at your feet and you realize the dog needs a walk, and then you start feeling guilty for not walking the dog more often. Then you wonder, why in the heck did I even think I could take care of a dog when I can't even take care of myself? And you don't know how to get out of it, the space, and now you haven't even done the laundry. It's overwhelmed. This is a lifestyle that we as women often fall into. And again, this is where I feel overwhelmed because I'm like, there's so many nuances to this and there's so many things I want to say about this, even just in our culture and the expectations that are put upon us as women. And now all the expectations that you feel are upon you as a single divorced mom. So much to this. And I know I'm not going to be able to address it all. So I'm going to just remind myself one episode at a time. One episode at a time. Okay. Now, I do see this happen a lot for those of us who have been living in an environment and relationships where there's this constant state of stress and intense emotions and racing thoughts. You perhaps even live like this, like I mentioned before, as a child, and your primary caregivers were always stressed and overwhelmed. And guess what? You absorbed that on to a cellular level. And so it's more normal, air quoting here, to function like this. It reminds me of when my husband at the time, he wasn't doing well at all. And it wasn't long after the incident where he had broke his hand punching the door, missing my... Anyways, things were intense to say the least. But that was my normal. Like, I literally wasn't even standing in that hospital room coming up with a great cover story thinking I'm an abused woman, because it was my normal to be in that state, right? So I was willing to cover. But he had left at this particular time, he had left for a business trip out of the country for work, which now I'm highly skeptical about that, but whatever. He left, and I remember this only because I wrote it down actually in my journal, how I felt free and alive. And I wrote down in my journal that I let the vacuum just run for hours in my house, and I had the music blasting because I could unload the dishwasher and make noise unloading the dishwasher and doing the dishes because I didn't have to be quiet. There was such a vast difference that it was such a vast difference that it was a shock to my system. It almost felt wrong. Like, I actually wrote that in my journal. Like, I felt guilty for feeling happy and free and joyful. Right? So I think it's just important to acknowledge and try to practice holding off any of that judgment or shame around this. Look, this is why healing after divorce and from these types of situations takes time and help, because there's a lot of pieces to unravel and rewire, but it is possible. So hold on to that hope. Okay, lifestyle overwhelm often shows up based on our perception of how we are coping and handling a situation. Okay. And the way that we're thinking about it creates the emotions of overwhelm. So this is where we really need to get clear around our thoughts. And so there's some strategies that can help us here. So many of you are waking up and start stressing over all the things that need to be done that day. How many of you are now working and managing kids on your own? while still trying to hold boundaries and create boundaries and understand boundaries with your ex. And maybe now there's another woman in the picture. Now, boundaries there, right? All these things, okay, that your brain's trying to figure out. And then you start tasking yourself to death, which half the time you just push it off and say to yourself, I'll just get to it later. And then you find yourself thinking, how can I get everything done? There's no way. Okay, so this is where we have to be super honest with ourselves. Okay, this is the tool that I'm offering you right now. The first thing I mentioned today was acceptance. Accepting this is where we're at. This is what's happening in my body. And then just taking a deep breath. And the second thing I'm offering you here is we got to get super honest with ourselves. The lie our brain tells us is that everything is important. And if everything is important, then nothing is important. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. The lie that our brain tells us is that everything is important on that list. And if everything on that list is important, then nothing is. This is lifestyle overwhelm because you are the one doing this to yourself. You are thinking and thinking about all the things, and that alone creates overwhelm. And you already have this long list of to-dos, but if you keep adding to that list, overwhelm. And then you have such a long list and don't do all the so-called important things and then push it off. It's really, really helpful to just stop and realize that all these things on my list are not equally ranked at the same level of importance. They're not all a 10 on that scale of importance, right? And so we want to be more strategic around how we navigate our days when we wake up in the morning as a divorced, single, working mom. And when I say working, that is not meaning you actually even maybe have a job outside the home. You are working no matter what, okay? But you are a hardworking woman, always have been. We've got to be more strategic now than ever because your situation has changed. And there's a lot of overwhelm. There's a lot more things and additional things and new things that are on your list. There's a lot of things that aren't. We got rid of a couple things. And can we just take some time to recognize that? And that's going to be the next thing I'm offering you to do is on this list of to-dos that your brain offers you all the time. Can we back it up a little bit and remember your control bubble? And I think when you go through that list of all the things that you have to do or that are on your mind, or you start to recognize all the thoughts that your brain is offering you that's creating these emotions and it's just piling up on you, I would bet that if you were to stop and get really aware that there are going to be a lot, I'm just going to give a percentage, but there's going to be a lot of those items that are not in your control. Meaning, how often are you thinking about what your ex is thinking? How often are you thinking about what your children are thinking about you, about him, about the situation? How much time and energy and space are you giving to things that you can't control? That is so much space in your head and in your body energetically that you're giving that's creating an overload, a shutdown, systems blown. And I know this is hard to let go of. I know I've been there. But if you really want to help yourself and you really want to get to a place of healing, just start there, okay? Just start with so much compassion and use my favorite word. It's just, oh, interesting. Here I am driving my car and I'm noticing that my brain, my thoughts, my space right now is over in his bubble. I'm wondering about him and what he's doing or not doing or what he's doing with her. And can I just say, you can be divorced, paper signed, and it still feels icky and dangerous and this betrayal when he's with someone else. I swear that's like a whole new episode. I just want to validate that. So let's just notice that's where our brain is right now. Take a deep breath and bring your brain back. Bring it back to you. This is where you just wiggle your fingers, tighten your grip around the steering wheel, wiggle your toes, roll your shoulders back, take a deep breath. Okay, come back to reality, come back to the present moment. You will eliminate more of this overwhelm than I think you realize when you just start staying in your bubble. So, the tool that I always offer that can help you with that awareness is good old thought dumps. Okay. Remember, this is literally dumping your thoughts all out on paper. This is not emotions. This is not how I feel. This is just what's my brain offering me. And we're going to notice that look at how many thoughts are not in my control. Look at how many thoughts are about him or about my kids or about the other woman or about all blah, blah, blah. Not in my control. Interesting. So another way that we create overwhelm is our brain tells us that we should be doing all the things. Okay. So this is for those of you who do the brain dump and then highlight all of the things as like, yep, I got to do all the things. Those are all the things that I should be doing. I should be worrying about him. I should be worrying about her. I should be worrying. Or I just should be doing all the laundry and I should be doing it the day that it needs done and putting it away the day that it needs to be put away. And I should have everything hung up and I should have my house clean and I should have dinner made every night and I should all the things, right? Lifestyle overwhelm comes when we believe that we should always be doing more. That even if we get things done, there's more to do and we should do it. Okay. I totally am relating to this. This is why I needed this episode for me to do today. Another trap is this idea that if you figure everything out in your head, right? If I just lay here long enough and think about it at night, or my alarm goes off in the morning, and if I just lay here long enough and think about it in my head, there's this belief that I can work it out, right? If I just figure it all out in my head, then I can work it out. Nope, not true. And this is again why the brain dump is so helpful, because you're going to get it all out of your head. And I cannot tell you how many times I will get it out on paper. And as I'm writing it out, I can see very quickly that this is not in my control bubble and does not need to be in my head, let alone something that I need to be doing something about. Now that it's all dumped out on paper, the next step, okay, this next strategy is to pick 3 things. I'm holding up 3. Pick 3 things, only 3, that you are going to choose that are the most important to accomplish that day. Remember, not everything on your list of things that you have to do, not everything on that list are ranked the same. They're not all a 10. I know it feels that way, but they're not all a 10. Now, many of your brains listening right now are probably starting to panic or go into fight flight because this is not how your brain works. It's not used to functioning this way. It's used to saying, no, all the things are really, really important. But we're just going to choose 3. Try this for just a couple weeks. Just try it. Dump it out. Highlight 3 things that we're going to look at. If a level 10, okay, comes up during the day, you're going to focus on that. This is where that sense of self-trust comes in, Like, okay, I've marked 3 things. These are my top priorities. And then my son calls and says, hey, I'm throwing up at school, come get me. Then that becomes my priority, right? Easy, no question. Now, all of a sudden that takes place of something else on my list. And that's okay. I want my son to come first. So trust that you will realize the things that are most important that day. But we're going to start off by picking the top 3 level 10s, and we're going to just start there. I have a lot of clients who are in the divorce process or having to go back to court. And so on top of all the other things that they're doing and that long list, now they're filling out paperwork, they're gathering financial information, which means they're making phone calls and digging through old files. And this can be absolutely overwhelming. And I want to validate how intentional this work needs to be in order to have a lifestyle change, right? So when your brain is really arguing about this, simply ask yourself, even if I write it out, ask, how can I make this work? You want to shift from I can't make this work to how can I make this work? And then I'm going to schedule it. So if I've got to fill out paperwork or I have to make a phone call, how can I make this work today? That is a completely different approach than I have too much to do. I don't know how I'm going to make this work. This is too overwhelming. I can't believe I have to do this. And then we go back to the blaming. If he wouldn't have da da da, then I wouldn't have to da da da, and I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have to worry about this. System overload. This is also how we beat the lie that everything is important. Because remember, if everything is important, that nothing is. And so we're going to schedule the important things. When you are intentional and activating your parasympathetic state and stabilizing your emotional response, this is where you're going to have an empowered divorce. So hopefully I have not overwhelmed you with all of the information about overwhelm. And if you are feeling a little overwhelmed, this might be a great indicator that some personal one-on-one guidance would be really helpful. And I would love to do that. There's so many intricacies here for you as an individual in your personal experience and journey that having a little bit more of that one-on-one and bringing some clarity to your situation can be helpful in your healing journey. All right, everyone, remember that no matter where you're at in your journey, and even in overwhelm, you are not less enough. You are not less of value. You are not less worth. You are 100% lovable, no matter what. And I love you for listening. Take care, everybody.